The most terrifying moment in any human life is not facing death, losing money, or even confronting failure. It's the moment when you realize that love, real love, demands everything you are and offers no guarantees in return. This isn't about the gentle sentimentality we've been taught to call love, nor the safe exchanges of affection that leave our defenses intact, but about what Joseph Campbell recognized as love's true nature: a complete surrender to forces beyond our control, a willingness to be utterly transformed or utterly destroyed. We live in a culture that has sanitized love into something manageable, something we can control with dating apps and relationship strategies, something we can approach like a business transaction with clear terms and expected outcomes. But Campbell understood, through his deep study of myth and human experience, that authentic love is always a hero's journey into the unknown, always a leap into an abyss where the only certainty is that you will not emerge unchanged. Look around at the careful distances people maintain, the way they speak of love as if it were a hobby rather than a holy fire, the way they approach relationships like consumers shopping for the perfect fit rather than pilgrims preparing for a sacred ordeal. We've learned to love with our guards up, to give our hearts in careful installments, to keep exit strategies ready, because we've been taught that smart people protect themselves from the very vulnerability that makes love possible in the first place. But Campbell saw through this cultural delusion. He recognized that what we call love in our safety-obsessed world is often just elaborate forms of possession, control, or mutual entertainment. Pleasant enough, but as different from true love as a photograph is from a sunrise. Real love, he taught, is what the medieval troubadours called the gentle heart. Not gentle in the sense of mild or safe, but gentle in the sense of noble, willing to risk everything for something greater than personal comfort or security. The hero's journey that Campbell mapped in mythology is fundamentally a love story, not the saccharine romance of Hollywood, but the fierce, uncompromising love that calls us beyond ourselves, that demands we face our dragons, cross our thresholds, and return transformed. Every authentic love affair, every genuine marriage, every moment of true intimacy is a call to adventure that asks us to abandon the familiar shores of our defended self and sail toward territories we cannot map in advance. This is why love feels so dangerous, why your chest tightens when you realize you're falling, why some part of you wants to run, even as another part wants to surrender completely. Because love, real love, is not about getting what you want. It's about becoming who you truly are through the alchemy of profound connection. Campbell taught us that every hero's journey begins with a call to adventure, and in the realm of love, this call comes disguised as that electric moment of recognition, what he called the meeting of the eyes, when two souls see past each other's social masks and glimpse the divine spark within. But here's what most people miss about this sacred moment. It's not an invitation to happiness, it's an invitation to wholeness, and wholeness always requires us to face the parts of ourselves we've been hiding from. The medieval troubadours that Campbell studied understood this profound truth. They sang of love as a wound that could only be healed by the weapon that delivered it, of passion as a sickness that doctors could not cure. They knew that authentic love is not about finding someone who fits comfortably into your existing life, but about being willing to have your entire life reorganized around something infinitely more important than your personal comfort or security. This is where the risk becomes real, where love reveals its true face as what Campbell called the burning point of life. Because to love authentically means to make someone else's well-being as important as your own, to tie your destiny to another person's journey, to say yes to a mystery that might break your heart or transform you into someone you never imagined you could become. It means releasing control over your own story and co-authoring something larger, something that neither of you could create alone. The call to this kind of love terrifies us because we've been conditioned to think of risk only in terms of loss, the risk of rejection, betrayal, abandonment, heartbreak. But Campbell understood that the greater risk is not taking the risk at all, not answering the call when it comes, choosing the safe prison of defended isolation over the dangerous freedom of genuine connection. The greatest tragedy is not having your heart broken, but never opening it wide enough for real love to enter in the first place. And here, I want to speak directly to those of you who have felt this call, who have stood at the threshold of deep love and felt both the terror and the irresistible pull towards something greater than yourselves. You are not alone in this sacred fear. You are part of an ancient lineage of lovers and heroes who have chosen courage over comfort, mystery over certainty, transformation over stagnation. If these words are resonating in your soul, if you're recognizing your own story in this mythic framework, then please subscribe and join this community of conscious hearts. Share in the comments below your own moment of standing at love's threshold. When did you first feel the call to risk everything for love? Your courage to be vulnerable here might be the very thing another soul needs to hear to answer their own call to the adventure of authentic intimacy. Once you've answered love's call and crossed into its territory, Campbell reminds us the real work begins, what he called the road of trials. But in love, these trials are not external obstacles to overcome. They are the slow, often painful process of allowing another person to see and love not just your shining qualities, but your shadows, your wounds, your unfinished places. This is what Campbell meant when he said that marriage is not a love affair, but an ordeal, a sacred ordeal that transforms both participants. Most relationships collapse at this stage because people discover that the person they fell in love with was partly projection, partly fantasy, partly their own unconscious longing for wholeness dressed up in another person's form. The real Sam or Susie begins to show through the dream, and suddenly you're faced with a choice that will determine whether this connection deepens into genuine love or dissolves into disappointment. Campbell was clear about what this choice requires. Not the withdrawal of your love when reality fails to match your ideal, but the expansion of your love to embrace what he called the poor, poor fact of actual human imperfection. This is where love reveals its deepest risk. Not the risk of being hurt by someone's malice, but the risk of being asked to love someone so completely that you must abandon your cherished illusions about both them and yourself. Real intimacy happens not when two perfect people find each other, but when two imperfect people decide to practice what Campbell called compassion for the fallibilities they have both brought to the sacred experiment of shared life. The trials of authentic love teach you that responsibility is not the enemy of passion, but its deepest expression. Campbell distinguished sharply between love and possession, between genuine commitment and emotional tyranny. When you truly love someone, you're not trying to capture them like a beautiful bird in a cage. You're trying to create conditions where both of you can become more fully yourselves than either of you could manage alone. But this requires a kind of daily heroism that our culture rarely acknowledges, the heroism of choosing love over and over again when it would be easier to choose comfort, convenience, or the false freedom of keeping your options open. It's the heroism of seeing your beloved clearly on the days when they're not particularly lovable, and choosing to love them anyway, not because they've earned it, but because love, real love, is not a reward system, but a spiritual practice. And to those of you who are in the midst of this ordeal right now, who are learning that love is both more difficult and more beautiful than any fairy tale prepared you for, I want you to know how sacred your struggle is. You are not failing at love when it feels hard. You are succeeding at it in the only way that matters. The challenges you're facing, the growth you're being called to, this is not evidence that you chose the wrong person or that love isn't worth the risk. This is evidence that you're participating in one of life's most transformative mysteries. Please stay connected to this community of fellow travelers by subscribing and share your own insights about love's trials in the comments. What has love taught you about yourself that you never expected to learn? Your wisdom, born from your willingness to risk and grow, is exactly what another soul needs to hear to continue their own heroic journey toward authentic intimacy. Campbell's final teaching about the hero's journey applies most powerfully to love, the return with wisdom, the integration of all you've learned in the special world of deep intimacy into a new way of being in ordinary reality. After all the trials, all the discoveries about yourself and your capacity for both love and growth, you must learn to live this expanded version of yourself in a world that often seems designed to shrink love down to manageable, conventional dimensions. This is what Campbell called becoming master of two worlds, someone who can function in a society that treats love as entertainment or commodity, while never forgetting that authentic love is actually a form of spiritual practice, a way of touching the divine through human connection. You discover that the love you've cultivated with one person has changed your capacity to love everything, not in a vague, sentimental way, but in the practical daily way of seeing the sacred in the mundane, the eternal in the temporary, the perfect in the imperfect. The risk that once terrified you reveals itself as the very thing that made real love possible. Without the willingness to be vulnerable, to be changed, to have your comfortable boundaries dissolved, you would have remained forever locked in the safe but sterile world of defended isolation. The ordeal that felt like it might destroy you actually reconstructed you into someone capable of a love you never knew existed, not the desperate neediness you once called love, not the careful transactions you thought were relationships, but the spacious, generous, undefended love that Campbell recognized as humanity's highest achievement. In this integration, you understand that love was never really about finding the right person, but about becoming the kind of person capable of authentic intimacy. The hero's journey through love teaches you that your capacity to love is not fixed, not limited by your past wounds or current fears, but infinitely expandable through practice, through courage, through the daily choice to see your beloved and yourself with what Campbell called the gentle heart. You realize that the greatest risk was never loving too much, but loving too little, holding back too much of yourself, playing it too safe in a universe that has already risked everything to bring you into existence. Every moment of genuine love, every instant of true intimacy, every day you choose vulnerability over protection is your way of saying yes to the cosmic gamble that created you, your way of justifying the universe's faith in your capacity for something greater than mere survival. And in the end, you discover that love's ultimate gift is not the elimination of risk, but the transformation of your relationship to risk itself. You learn to dance with uncertainty, to find stability not in guarantees, but in your own growing capacity to love whatever comes, to meet each moment of your shared life with the curiosity of an explorer rather than the anxiety of a defendant. The love that once required you to risk everything now gives you the courage to risk everything again and again, because you've learned the secret Campbell spent his life teaching, that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And the treasure of authentic love is always worth whatever it costs to find it. The risk of love becomes not something to avoid, but something to embrace, because it's the only path to the life you came here to live. Not the small, safe life of careful calculations and protected hearts, but the large, luminous life of someone who dared to answer love's call and discovered that the greatest adventure of all is learning to love without reservation in a world that will break your heart and mend it 1,000 times over.